Right, so this is the Energy Skate Park simulation. So we've got a few things we can do here. We've got a bar chart, we've got a pie chart, we've got a grid. We can measure the speed. And what happens is if I pull him up here, we can see the blue bar appears and the yellow bar appears. Now the total, the yellow bar, that's the amount of energy in total that he has. A little red bar has appeared, and that's because when he dropped to the ground, some heat energy was produced. So I give him a little bit more, and then it turns into heat again. If I lift him up and then put him down here, the potential energy, that's the same as gravitational energy. We learned about gravitational energy. When I let go, it turns into kinetic energy, but then because of friction, he gets hotter and hotter. So the type of so if we were to draw an energy transfer diagram here, we could say, let's just see if I can draw one here. So the energy transfer diagram might be something like gravitational. I'm going to make it go down. So I'll do that. Gravitational to kinetic and heat or thermal. So thermal energy is our wasted energy, isn't it? And the kinetic energy is the useful energy. But you can see that before, we always thought about it as just changing in one go, whereas in this case, you can see it's changing gradually. So let's restart the skater. And what we can do as well is we can turn it into slow motion. So restart it, and you can see as he drops, it changes, and when he's going fastest, that's when he gets the most amount of thermal energy. So let's pause that. What do you think is going to be different if I turn the friction down? What differences do you think you will notice? So I've turned the friction down quite a bit. I'll lift it up this time. Well, let's just get it on slow motion first so we can see things more easily. So notice that as he fell, a smaller amount of thermal energy is produced. A tiny amount of thermal energy is produced. He also gets faster more quickly. So he reaches a higher kinetic energy and more thermal energy is produced. He also goes much higher on the other side. So you can imagine this sort of makes sense, right? If we had a skateboard and we wanted a skateboard to go really easily and like roll really well, we would want to reduce the friction. So one of the things they want you to know about is how to reduce the friction so as you can reduce the amount of energy lost. So if we want to reduce this heat lost, we want to reduce the friction. And we want to think, how can we reduce the friction? So what do you think you would do to reduce the friction on these wheels? Increasing the speed is not going to reduce the friction. Increasing the speed is going to increase the friction, actually. So if things are rubbing faster, there's going to be a greater force. You're going to do some work on the skateboard itself. Imagine the kind of things that could have increased friction might be that it's not designed very well. Maybe they're rubbing too much, and because there's lots of friction, it may be the surface are very rough. So what you can do is you can use oil or lubricant. Okay, so if we use oil or lubricant, it's difficult to write it there. I'm going to write it up here with a darker blue. Lubricant. So lubricant is like oil. It's a type of liquid that you can squirt into, you can put into, and so things slide more easily. All right. Like if you've got a bike and the chain is rubbing and it's difficult to ride your bike, you might want to put oil in the chain, and then it runs more smoothly. Okay. So we reduce the friction. If we reduce the friction, we get then he can last for much longer. So if we had no friction at all, then the kind of thing that you're going to see is, oh, let me just get the go back here. So if we had no friction at all, let's just restart the skater. He started up here, no thermal energy is produced, and he goes up to the same point on the other side. And when he comes back down here, he goes up to the same point as well. So if I put it back to normal, he's just going to keep going forever and ever and ever. He's never going to stop. Okay, he doesn't need to keep making the skateboard go, because there's no friction. He'll never stop. Okay, but in reality, in the real world, there will always be some friction. And what we need to try to do is, if we want to reduce it, we've got to think, how can we reduce it? And for that, we use oil or lubricant. Okay, so this is a really good simulator for looking at other things as well. But we're just going to leave it there. So I'll stop that video and we'll save the video.